When my father passed, he left behind more than just memories. He left us a company built with his blood, sweat, and years of sacrifice. To me, it wasn't just a business. It was his legacy, the very thing that kept his name alive. But what I never imagined was that my own brother would steal it from me. From the very beginning, I knew things wouldn't be easy. I was the eldest, but I was also the daughter. And in our family, that meant my voice was softer, my presence lighter, always overshadowed by the son who was praised for simply being born male. I worked harder, stayed longer, made myself indispensable, yet still, in their eyes, it was his future they were protecting. Mine was invisible. I remember the way he smiled at me across the table, papers spread out in front of him, pretending to be sincere, pretending to be a partner. It was the same smile he used when we were children, when he broke something and made sure I took the blame. Back then, I thought it was harmless mischief. I didn't know it was a glimpse of the man he would become, someone who could destroy everything in the name of greed and pride. The ink on my father's will was barely dry when the betrayal began. My brother moved quickly, whispering into the ears of relatives, courting investors behind closed doors, reshaping the truth to make it look as though I was unfit to lead. He forged narratives, twisted documents, and by the time I realized what was happening, the foundation beneath me was already cracking. The board looked at me with suspicion. Employees I had fought for began to waver. And suddenly, I was standing on the outside of the very doors I had worked so hard to keep open. I poured my youth into that company. I gave up nights of sleep, turned down proposals of marriage, missed holidays and family gatherings, all so I could carry my father's dream forward. I believed my efforts would be seen, respected, remembered, but none of that mattered. With a single signature, my brother erased me, as if I had never existed at all. Still, betrayal has a way of changing you. At first, it leaves you broken, drowning in the unfairness of it all. But slowly, it plants something else: anger. A quiet, burning anger that doesn't go away. It sharpens you, reshapes you, turns your pain into something far stronger. My brother thought he had won. He thought the game was over. But what he didn't know was that every night I sat in the silence of my empty office. Every time I replayed his smug words in my head, I was already planting the seeds of my revenge. And when those seeds bloomed, he would be the last to see it coming. From the time I was old enough to understand what hard work meant, I stood by my father's side in the company. While my friends chased parties and vacations, I was in the office, learning balance sheets, negotiating contracts, and calming restless employees. My father used to say, "You have the mind of a leader and the heart of a protector." Those words carried me through sleepless nights, through the loneliness of knowing I was giving up a personal life to hold on to a dream larger than myself. But in my family, no matter how much I gave, there was one truth I could never escape. I was the daughter, and he was the son. My brother never stayed late, never sacrificed his evenings, never skipped a single night out. Yet, somehow he was always the one praised, always the one relatives pointed to and said, "He will be the man of the house. He will carry the name forward." It was as if my efforts were invisible, erased simply because of who I was and who I wasn't. Still, I didn't complain. I believed my work would speak louder than their doubts. I believed results couldn't be ignored. And for a time, I thought I was right. The company flourished. Clients trusted me. Employees respected me. I felt for once that my father's dream and mine were finally aligned. But my brother, he was different. He carried himself with charm, the kind that dazzled strangers but rotted at the core. He knew how to smile, how to shake hands, how to win favor without ever lifting a finger. And people fell for it, over and over again. He was entitled, spoiled, and yet adored. I was diligent, loyal, and yet underestimated. It was an imbalance I grew up with, one I thought I could live with until the day he decided to turn it into a weapon. The first time I realized just how fragile my position was came in a family meeting. An uncle leaned across the table, patted my brother on the back, and said, "Your father would be proud to see you in charge one day." I remember looking down at my hands, silent, as if I didn't exist. As if all the nights I sat beside my father's hospital bed, taking notes on his last instructions for the company, meant nothing. In their eyes, my role was temporary, a placeholder until the son was ready to arrive. That night, I went home, opened the drawer of my desk, and pulled out my father's old fountain pen. It was heavy in my hand, not because of its weight, but because of what it symbolized. It was the pen he used to sign every deal, the pen he carried even when his hands trembled from age. It was the one thing that tied me directly to him, the one object I knew my brother couldn't steal. As I held it, I realized that the company wasn't just paper and numbers, it was identity, it was legacy, and losing it would mean losing not just my father's dream, but myself. That was the risk I faced. If my brother succeeded in pushing me aside, I would not only lose everything I had built, I would lose the very thing that gave my life meaning, and I refused to let that happen. The first crack in the walls I thought I had built came quietly. A missing document here, a confused phone call there. At first, I dismissed it as office mistakes, but then, one afternoon, a client called me directly. His voice was hesitant, almost apologetic, as he asked me why I had agreed to give up a controlling share of the company. My heart stopped. I hadn't signed anything of the sort. I rushed to the office, tore through files, checked contracts, nothing, until I saw it. A signature that looked like mine, my name on papers I had never touched. My brother had met with investors behind my back, and he had signed away the company as if I had agreed. The betrayal wasn't just a theft of property, it was a theft of identity. He didn't just want control, he wanted to erase my existence from the company's history. I confronted him, but he only smiled, that same mocking smile, and said, "It's business, sister. Don't take it so personally." As if the years of sacrifice, the sleepless nights, the promises whispered by our dying father were nothing more than numbers on a page. But the deeper wound came not from forged papers, but from humiliation. It was at a family gathering, one meant to honor our father's memory. Relatives filled the living room, laughter and chatter echoing off the walls. I stood to speak, to share my vision for carrying forward what our father built. But before I could finish, my brother interrupted. His voice was loud, dripping with arrogance. "Why are we even listening to her? Women don't belong in boardrooms. This isn't her place." The room fell into silence. Then, one by one, the laughter started. Some tried to hide it behind their hands, others chuckled openly. My uncles nodded in agreement. My aunts looked away. And I stood there, frozen, every word I had prepared swallowed by their ridicule. That night, I didn't sleep. His words replayed in my head again and again. Not because I believed them, but because I realized how easily others did. I wasn't just fighting my brother. I was fighting generations of belief that I was less, simply because of who I was. For a time, it felt like I was losing. My position on the board diminished, my voice silenced in meetings, my father's legacy slipping further from my grasp. But it is in silence, I learned, that strength can grow unnoticed. While my brother paraded his false victories, I listened, I watched, and I began to build. I turned not to the powerful or the celebrated, but to the overlooked, the employees my brother ignored, the partners he dismissed, the allies he underestimated, the receptionist who had been with us since the early days, the quiet accountant who saw every number pass through her hands, the rival company leader my brother insulted in public, but who carried a sharp mind and a long memory. One by one, I reached out. One by one, they listened. I didn't fight him with noise. I fought him with silence. While he mocked me at family dinners and posed for photographs, I planted my seeds quietly, carefully. Seeds of loyalty, seeds of strategy, seeds of revenge. And the day would come when those seeds would grow, and my brother would see just how dangerous the sister he underestimated had become. The day finally came. My brother sat at the head of the boardroom table, surrounded by investors, lawyers, and advisors. His laughter filled the room, his arrogance spilling into every corner. He believed he was untouchable. He believed the empire he had stolen was now beyond my reach. He leaned back in his chair, tapped the table with his fingers, and said, "Who would dare to challenge me now? Who could possibly take this from me?" He didn't know that his downfall was already written. For months, whispers had spread through the business world of a mysterious investor, an entity no one could trace, a company that appeared out of nowhere with resources that rivaled his own. He ignored the warnings, dismissed the rumors, certain that no shadow could threaten him. When the takeover bid arrived, he scoffed, waving the papers in the air like they were a joke. He told the board that it was nothing but a desperate move, that no one would ever dare to go through with it. But as the documents were unsealed, as the signatures were revealed, silence fell over the room. Every eye turned toward the name on the papers, and then toward the door. I stepped inside. The look on his face was one I will never forget. For the first time, his confidence cracked. His mouth opened, but no words came out. He stared at me as if I were a ghost, as if the sister he had erased from existence had risen from ashes he thought were long cold. I walked slowly, every step deliberate, until I stood across from him at the table. My voice was calm, steady, sharper than any blade. "You called me weak. You called me unworthy. You mocked me, humiliated me, stole what our father left in my hands. But today you signed your empire back into mine." The board murmured, shocked, some trying to hide their satisfaction, others stunned into silence. My brother looked down at the papers, his hands trembling, his signature glaring back at him. He had agreed to the takeover, never realizing who he was dealing with. In that moment, the tables turned. The sister he had pushed aside, the woman he thought incapable, had built an empire of her own in the shadows. And now, before his very eyes, I took everything back. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't gloat. I simply watched as the weight of his defeat crushed the arrogance from his face. And in that silence, he finally understood. The game was never his to win. I didn't just reclaim my father's legacy. I reclaimed my voice. For years they tried to silence me, to make me believe I was less, that I had no place in the seat of power. But in the end, it wasn't my brother's arrogance that defined our story. It was my patience, my silence, my precision. Revenge is not always fire and fury. Sometimes it is quiet. Sometimes it is the calm hand that waits until the perfect moment to strike. When the boardroom emptied and the echoes of his defeat still lingered in the air, I walked alone into my father's old office. The room smelled the same, like old leather and polished wood. On the desk lay the memories of a man who built everything with integrity. I reached into my bag and pulled out the fountain pen I had carried all this time. The weight of it was heavier than ever, but this time it did not feel like a burden. It felt like a victory. I placed it carefully on the desk. For me, it was not just a pen. It was a symbol that his dream had not been stolen, that his legacy had survived. And in that moment, I realized something even greater. I had not only saved the company, I had saved myself. I had proven that no voice, no matter how underestimated, can be silenced forever. So, to anyone who has ever been overlooked, mocked, or betrayed, I say this: do not give up. Do not believe those who tell you that you are less, or that you do not belong. Stand tall, be patient. Let your silence become your strength, because the day will come when those who underestimated you will be forced to see who you truly are. And when that day comes, you won't just win back what was taken from you, you will rise stronger, unshakable, and unforgettable. I didn't just reclaim my father's legacy, I reclaimed my voice. For years they tried to silence me, to make me believe I was small, fragile, unworthy of carrying his dream. But they were wrong. Revenge isn't always fire and fury. Sometimes it's patience, silence, and precision. When the noise faded, when the boardroom emptied, I walked down the quiet hallway to my father's office. The door creaked open, and for a moment, it felt like stepping back into time. The shelves still carried his books. The chair still faced the window he used to stare out of when making decisions that shaped our family. On the desk, bare and waiting, I placed the fountain pen I had guarded all these years. It rested there, gleaming under the dim light, no longer just an heirloom but a promise fulfilled. I felt his presence in that room. I felt the weight of everything I had fought for, everything I had lost, and everything I had finally reclaimed. And for the first time since he passed, I felt at peace. To everyone who listens to my story, I want you to remember this. Being underestimated is not the end of your journey. It can be the beginning of your greatest strength. Let their laughter, their doubt, their betrayal become the fuel that drives you forward. Do not break, do not surrender. Because the day will come when you will rise, and when you do, you will not just recover what was stolen, you will stand taller than you ever thought possible. I walked out of that office knowing the war was over. My brother had tried to bury me, but I had turned the dirt into soil. And from that soil, I grew into something unshakable. And that is the power of resilience.